Hi, Theodora.
Hi.
So can you tell me how you became aware of issues with 5G?
Well, our organization has long worked on cell phone radiation and wireless because cell phones and wireless devices were never pre-market tested for safety. And 5G came on our radar because it is the 5th generation wireless network, which is going to increase the amounts of wireless devices we use and also increase cell tower antennas that are going to be placed really close to our homes. So it came on the radar fast, and this is what we are working on almost predominantly right now.
So my feeling is that the industry is really just like steamrolling this in because I'm concerned too, because these 5G, whatever, transceivers are going to be almost on every block, correct?
Yes, they're talking about 800,000 new antennas facilities to be in the United States. We only have right now about 200,000, so that is a lot.
In order to function, do these things emanate more radiation than our current cell phone system?
Well, actually, the new cell installations themselves are much lower power, but there are going to be a lot more of them. And we know by industry reports themselves that is going to increase the radiation in the vicinity of the area where they are placed. Because in countries that have more protective, allowable amounts of radiation in the air, like from cell towers, like Italy, Brussels, Belgium, Switzerland, industry is trying to have these governments change their laws to accommodate 5G deployment. They say that we can't deploy 5G in these countries with such strict limits. They have to loosen their limits to allow more radiation exposures. So even though they're smaller, there's going to be more of them. It's like sprinkling salt. Every granule of salt adds salt, right? You can say, well, it's small, but when you sprinkle it, that's a lot of pieces. So just one way to think about it.
So if we wanted to test beforehand, I mean, is there really a way to test cumulative exposure without making something take place in real time, like 5 years, 10 years?
Well, the EPA used to be regularly testing or issued reports on, what's the radiation level in this city, in that city, in this place. And the last report that I've seen was the mid-80s. So they're no longer doing that. We don't have the data on what the current levels are in all the cities in the United States. And by the way, some cities are test cities in the United States for 5G technology. But there was a study that just came out, and actually several others, showing it has exponentially increased the amount of radiation levels that we have now. We would expect it to be even more. They haven't even put up or made live an entire network of this new technology. I mean, we don't even have 5G phones yet commercially available. So we won't really know until it's all in place and functioning.
So we seem to be lacking scientific data on this. Is there any anecdotal data that might support our need for caution in this?
Well, actually, there is substantial published, peer-reviewed data showing adverse effects from wireless radio frequency radiation, the current technology that we use now. And there are hundreds of scientists who are saying, because of that published data, that there should be a moratorium on 5G rollout because it's going to increase the radiation levels so much. Now, when it comes to just 5G, that gets more complicated because we don't have people who've been exposed to it for a long time to know what will the effect be. But we have all this data showing that the current frequencies and modulations, meaning the 2G, 3G, 4G, has effects on our bodies. So there are a couple published reviews. There's a review on 5G where it's called a new environmental pollution, and caution is called for, and it can increase health effects in the community. There's research on the millimeter waves. I don't know if you knew that 5G technology is going to use wireless frequencies that we've never actually, sub-millimeter and millimeter wave frequencies that have never been commercially used before. They're used in military weapons at high power but at a lower power, not in terms of our telecommunications. And there's research that shows it affects the skin in a unique way. It doesn't penetrate deeper than the skin, but in the skin, the sweat glands are affected in a way that's quite unique, and there are scientists who are warning that because of that, we need to look at the biological effects. So there actually, there's been an outcry among scientists on this issue. What we don't have is government, the US government, taking action on this issue.
So Theodora, can you just give us a quick intro to the film we're about to look at?
So this is a short video that is part of a longer report which you can find online by Investigate Europe, which is investigative journalists who looked into the issue of 5G, and it's titled 5G, the Mass Experiment. And the film talks about how here we're going to put in this new technology, expose everyone to higher levels of radiation, and there are scientists who are saying this needs to be halted, and scientists who are saying it's not a problem. And when you look at the money, when you follow the money, we find that the groups who are saying it's not a problem are industry loyal. And that's sort of what I think is one of the most important pieces to this story of 5G, is that the groups making the decisions are connected to industry or are part of groups that say, and have said for years, there's no problem. They're invite-only groups.
Great, so let's take a look at the film.
Great.
There's a revolution on the way. It's the 5G revolution. Although some say this will be more like an experiment that will affect billions of people. 5G stands for fifth generation mobile services. The internet will be faster than ever. Downloading a high-definition movie will take mere seconds. By 2025, the European Commission is planning for all urban areas across the continent to have seamless 5G coverage. This will enable a new age in the Internet of Things. Smart driverless cars and smart hospitals, smart fridges, coffee makers, and even baby diapers. But what citizens are not told is that for this to happen, countless new antennas will be added. In our neighborhoods, our workplaces, even in our homes. Are mobile communications dangerous? The scientific community is divided. Some experts maintain they are safe, others have serious concerns. In 2011, the WHO classified electromagnetic fields associated with cell phones as possibly carcinogenic to humans. And studies published in 2018 showed that when rats were exposed to such fields, it increased their risk of certain types of cancer. Even among those who believe the technology is safe, many admit that more studies are needed. And for 5G, there are almost no studies. Telecom companies themselves have noted that electromagnetic signals may pose health risks. So why are the EU Commission and our governments turning a blind eye? They cite guidelines established by transnational scientific bodies. But Investigate Europe has found that these bodies are closed clubs. People with dissenting opinions are not invited in. And a significant number of the scientists involved have received funding from companies with vested interests in the 5G rollout. There is no risk-free society. Other things we consume are also bad for our health, from alcohol to junk food. But if you don't want a hamburger, you can simply avoid hamburgers. With 5G, there is no opt-out.
Thanks for sharing that film, and that film has made me much more aware of the dangers. What specifically should we be watching out for here in Greenbelt?
Well, in Greenbelt, the council has officially opposed cell towers on schools. And when the high school, Roosevelt, there was a proposed cell tower, people came together in opposition to that. And in fact, the entire contract to put cell towers on, the leasing agreement to put cell towers on Prince George's County schools was ended because of a lot of things that happened here in Greenbelt. This is going to bring more radiation into the city. I mean, literally on the street lights, the utility poles is where these antennas can be placed. And I'll say in cities in In California, for example, what people are doing is saying, we want ordinances in our city to halt and prohibit these antennas from being in our front yards. And that's actually been passed in Fairfax and Mill Valley. Petaluma, which is a city in California, has a 500-foot setback from the antennas to homes. So there is a lot happening around the nation, and here in Greenbelt, I know that there is an awareness, a growing awareness as well, because people don't want antennas so close to them.
And my understanding, and tell me if this is correct, these work in short ranges. So would one of these, couldn't we expect an antenna per block or every 2 blocks?
In places where they are putting these small cells up, there are antennas about every block. And if you think about it, if one carrier puts their antenna up, all the other carriers want to do it as well. And so in DC, there's the possibility of several installations per block. What we found is that industry will often go as far as they're allowed to go in terms of putting stuff up. If the law doesn't say they can't, well, then they can. And part of the problem is that federally, at the federal level, the Federal Communications Commission has been also pushing for 5G and stripping away local authority rule and authority over what they can have in their rights of way. So Greenbelt's in a tough position because actually there are federal regulations that they have to follow as well.
So knowing these dangers, what can we as citizens do to advocate for ourselves?
Well, this is one of those all hands on deck situations where you want to learn about the issue, get educated on it, educate policymakers. People are working at every level of government, from going to their state representatives, to their federal representatives, to the local council, people who represent us, to be accountable to our health and take action on this issue. So I recommend talking to your friends and family, learning about the issue, and asking for laws that are protective. You know, I should add something. Several members of Congress have been calling on the FCC for proof of safety and have not gotten it, but are calling it out. So this is happening. This is not something people are not talking about. They are talking about it.
I am so glad to hear that. I'm really, really hoping that that the right thing happens here, and that our government, and especially the FCC, watch out for us more than they are watching out for industry. Anyway, so thanks for joining us, Theodora.
Thank you so much for having me.